Travis Scott live is an experience. His fans look at him like he's the messiah of music.
Astroworld Fest was a concert that you didn't want to miss.
Here in Houston, we don't get a lot of festivals.
We were stoked.
Like, people are ready to party.
You talk to any high schooler in Houston, they're talking about this concert.
Tickets sold out in 30 minutes.
I just thought I had to be there.
We planned everything out, outfits, shades.
There was a huge buzz about it. Let's go get it. It's about to go down.
As soon as they let the gates open.
They lost all control of the entry points. It was just overwhelming chaos.
You can do whatever you want because you're in Astroworld. There was a countdown clock until Travis Scott came out.
And that's when it started getting pretty hectic.
And I'm like, oh my God, I can't take a deep breath.
The music started playing and you just felt your whole body just move forward.
It became overwhelming real fast.
And then the wave comes back.
I fell on something. I fell on someone. Because people were falling on me.
Houston 911.
It was crazy, man.
People are dead and hundreds others hurt.
One lawsuit claims the festival was a, quote, predictable and preventable tragedy.
I relived that moment trying to change my actions for a different outcome, but it's always the same outcome.
You didn't have to know somebody to be affected.
You guys were in charge of this. What was the failure?
Never spoke about it before, but we're doing this so that people will know the truth.
That was the trailer for the Netflix documentary Trainwreck, the Astroworld Tragedy. And this is Factual America. I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood. Each week I watch a hit documentary and then talk with the filmmakers and their subjects. On November 5th, 2021, rapper Travis Scott stepped on stage to perform his set at the Astroworld Festival. What should have been the best night of the festival goers' lives quickly turned into a disaster that left 10 dead and hundreds injured. Using exclusive footage and eyewitness accounts, the Astroworld tragedy reveals what really happened that night, from the perspective of the survivors, paramedics, and security staff who witnessed it firsthand. Award-winning filmmakers Yemi Bamiro and Kari Lia join us to discuss this gripping film and to understand who is responsible for this tragedy. Stay tuned. So to remind our viewers and listeners, after that trailer and introduction, we're talking about Trainwreck, the Astroworld tragedy. It's first installment of this year's Trainwreck series. It's streaming on Netflix from June 10th. So congratulations, both of you. It's great to have you on. And Yemi, welcome back. We had you on in the first season for One Man in His Shoes. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember, yeah.
Onwards and upwards for you. You are in that rarefied breath. You can say in one breath your name in the same breath as Alex Gibney and R.J. Cutler, and I should add Brent Wilson, who did the Brian Wilson doc, as the only repeat guests on Factual America. So it's great to have you on and see how well your career has really taken off in the last 5 years.
Oh, thank you.
So with that in mind, you've now got a new doc. It's Trainwreck, the Astroworld Tragedy. Maybe you can give us a synopsis of what this documentary is about.
Yeah, thank you. So this film looks at the Astroworld Festival that happened in 2021. It was a music festival that happened in Houston, Texas. It was Travis Scott's festival. The first festival sort of like off the back of COVID, the world was just sort of like opening back up. Lots of really exciting people, young people sort of like flocked to this incredible spectacle of a concert, and unfortunately some horrifying things unfolded that resulted in loss of life and lots of people, living with a lot of trauma as a result of what they saw and sort of like experienced that night. So it's a pretty harrowing story.
Agreed. And your film does a great job of bringing it to life, I have to say, as much as you would want to, or certainly in a very sympathetic way, certainly sympathetic to those who tragically lost their lives. I mean, before talking more about this story specifically, I mean, Kari, you're the series exec, is that right? So
I'm the executive producer of the film. Yeah,
the executive producer. Yeah. So what drew you to this story? To kick off this series this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's so incredible about the film and what the team did such a good job of telling the story is like it's about a lot of young people right at that end of COVID, and we all remembered it. Everyone felt locked down. They were all a bit pissed off, and they wanted to kind of go and have some fun and see their friends and have an incredible time. And there was a real innocence with that. And I think what we tell the story of is that, you know, some wonderful young people that come from all different parts of the US and that all came together to Houston to see this show. And then what happens subsequently. And it's a story, as Yemi says, that is about the tragedy, but it's also about how a lot of young people stepped up and tried to help each other. And I think that is something that I certainly took from it as feeling really, you know, that kind of, I didn't know that about it, and I found that really inspiring.
Okay. I completely agree. I mean, I think that definitely comes across. Yemi, I mean, your film does a great job also, so it captures the zeitgeist that Kari's talking about, you know, that what was going on at that time. But maybe walk us through the run up to that concert. I mean, Kari's already said things are finally opening up after COVID. You know, there's all this pent up energy, but there's a lot of things building up. Didn't have to lead to this, but a lot of excitement and energy.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the fact that, you know, there had been 2 previous concerts before that had been, you know, really successful and really just, you know, well-run concerts that, you know, attracted lots of amazing superstars, musicians to Houston. 2018 and 2019, 2020 didn't happen because of COVID. And then the world opens back up, and then here we are in 2021, and everybody's really excited. And I think the difference with 2021 is that this was a 2-day festival. So the previous iterations of Astroworld were 1-day festivals. So yeah, there was a lot of anticipation and a lot of hype, because I think this festival was, you know, it was bigger in its footprint, in its scope, in its scale. And, you know, that all manifested in a lot of these young people just looking forward to this time after being locked down for a long time, you know?
Mm-hmm. And it's also, it's Travis Scott, so the famous rapper who is from Houston is giving. So I thought I'm originally from Texas, so I'm not from Houston, but I thought what you picked up on, I mean, I'm old enough to know that Houston's changed quite a bit in the last few decades, but I thought you captured it quite well. There's a vibe to Houston that's very unique. What did you think of Houston?
Sorry, Kari, do you want to answer? I can
No,
answer.
you go.
Yeah. So yeah, like obviously because of One Man in His Shoes, I'd spent a lot of time in Houston, and I've always had a soft spot for Houston. I think we spoke amongst ourselves in the creative team about Houston feeling like a character in the film, and that was a really important thing for us to sort of, you know, realize, and we wanted it to have a placement, because you're from Texas, so you know Houston feels a lot different from anywhere else in the States, or you know, or from that state. So I think giving, you know, having a sense of place was really important to us, and it was something that we thought about a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not making a plug for Houston, but it is, I mean, it's one of these kind of cities that falls under the radar when people think about the United States, and it's the 4th largest city, right? You know, it's huge, it's massive, and there's a lot going on there. And I think, and also capturing the youth outside of things, I thought it's probably a more youthful city than I remember it, to be honest with you. So as you say, they have all these futures ahead of them, but yet, I mean, there's also, let's face it, Travis Scott does have a history. He has a history of high energy concerts, right?
Yeah.
And he's had some before this. He also had had some, violence and stuff break out at concerts. So there was a bit of a reputation that came with him, rightly or wrongly. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's all laid out in the film. I think it's, I think he's had some previous at his concerts, but I think if we're talking specifically about Astroworld, the previous two iterations of the festival,
Fair enough.
They were fine and there were no incidents. So I'm not necessarily sure that you could hold that against him, but I think that I think everybody was really looking forward to what was going to happen at this festival, and it was sort of like a huge iteration in terms of like the size of what was going to happen.
Right. And you see, I've been away for a while, and I was actually thinking the old Astroworld still existed, but no, it's as you point out, it stopped 20 years ago. Kari, so all that said, I mean, as your film. It is a very positive and uplifting film, and it throughout. But I mean, what happened on that night seems like, and I think your film shows, was so predictable, wasn't it? Unfortunately, and people just kind of turned a blind eye to it. Is that fair to say?
I think what we did with it's a great question. I think what we did with our team is build up the facts and build up we went through thousands of pages of court documents, and we really built up a picture of what happened. Because you have to remember, especially if you listen to the court proceedings, there were so many different ideas of what happened, because there were tens of thousands of people there, and everyone had a different experience. So, even if you look online, you'll have people saying, well, I didn't see anything happen bad, and it was possible to go to Astroworld, and you can see it from the footage in the film. It was possible. Thousands of people went to the concert, had no idea what happened, and walked away and said, hey, I had a great time. Right? Because they didn't know it was really in one section. Yeah. So yes, we put together all of the evidence, and there are, text messages and, evidence that is known and in the public domain that we talk about. And yes, and I do think there are learnings that can be learned from this. And I think that's what we really, and Yemi and our producer Hannah spent a lot of time with the victims and the families, and this is really about them, and making sure, our hope that it never happens again.
Okay.
Yeah, just to jump in there as well,
certainly.
Something Kari said, like I think it's combing through the sort of like the hundreds of hours of archive footage that we did, it was fascinating, right? Because like in some areas, people are having the time of their life, like you're seeing it, at exactly the same time, people are having the worst night of their life. So those two extremes like really did coexist that night at Astroworld. There were sections that had no idea what were happening in other parts of sort of like the festival grounds, and like we sort of, that was a thing that really shocked us as a sort of like a production team when we were combing through all of this archive footage, the fact that these two extremes of experience were taking place at the same time,
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. I mean, it's a tale of two cities, right? I mean, it's just you've got, I get my stage directions wrong, but you got stage right, I guess, which is just, it's a Travis Scott concert, as you would expect it to be going on. And then stage left is just, a horrible catastrophe taking place, and just separated by this, people watch the film, you'll see it, it's all laid out very well, but this just kind of barrier for some of the health and safety and camera people and all that stuff kind of separating the two. And they were just completely oblivious on one side. I mean, and I guess you were saying all the court documents, I mean, it's not even just like archival and all the news, but you've got like pretty much everyone in that crowd had a phone and we're filming it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you must have had, it's fair to say there's a lot of exclusive footage and stuff that's not probably been shown before, but not that we can talk more about the making of the film in a bit, but that must have taken you hours and days to just comb through all that and then decide what you can and can't show. Because I imagine you did see some things that were quite unpleasant, to say the very least.
Yeah, 100. Yes, you go ahead, Kari.
No, I was just going to say we have a long-suffering editor, Jesse Dixon, who the team would pile in all of the archival footage, and that was kind of combed from the internet. And I mean, we had to look at almost every minute by minute what we had, because obviously you can imagine people have their phones, but they put them away, and so they only do very certain sections. So we literally knew every second of the song and where the cameras were placed and where. But it's an incredible way to make a documentary if you think about it, because Yemi wasn't there filming the documentary, so 2/3 of the film is actually off of people's phones, probably about we haven't done the math, but so it's a really incredible way to be able to tell a story and document a story with like real journalism, even though we weren't there.
No, I think, I hadn't even thought of that, but yes, I felt like I saw the part of the concert I wanted or would like to see is in terms of telling the story, and yet you didn't have a single camera there, did you? So that is amazing. I mean, we were talking about, so as you say, you point all these things out, all these things that could have been done, learnings that have hopefully been learned since this all happened. But it's ultimately ruled an accident, isn't it? Is that right, Kari?
Yeah, that's right. It is ruled an accident. And, I think our job was just to show the facts for what happened. And we know, viewers are really smart. We can lay it all out for them and they can make up their own mind. And that's what we did. And I think our aim was to show it as clearly and transparently as possible and not take viewers for granted,
Okay. I mean, I'll say it. You can't probably say it. It does feel like there's a lot of passing the buck. I mean, I have sympathy, and at the same time, you have sympathy, but Houston police, well, they say they're there for law enforcement. I don't know. I think don't know what the Houston Fire Department exactly says, but I think Live Action and others have said, well, no, we cleared everything with the proper authorities. And then Live Action doesn't really take any. So no one's really, has anyone ever in the end taken any responsibility for this tragedy?
I mean, I think, that's a really good question. And maybe it's possible that people have personally taken some responsibility. But I think the way that we show it in the film is very much the way it is. And like we say, we let viewers make up their own mind about who is ultimately responsible.
Okay. I think I want to get back to that point, but I'm going to give our listeners and viewers a quick break and say, will we be right back with Yemi Bamiro and Kari Lia, the award-winning filmmakers behind Trainwreck, the Astroworld tragedy. It's the first installment of this year's Trainwreck series, and it's streaming on Netflix from June 10th. Factual America is brought to you by Alamo Pictures, a London-based production company specializing in feature documentaries, factual television, and shorts about the U.S. Benefiting from an outsider's keen eye and years of stateside experience, Alamo's filmmakers explore topical, uniquely American stories from a sympathetic European perspective. The result is engaging cinema and television that defies stereotypes and helps audiences truly understand what makes America tick. Check out Alamo's website at alamopictures.co.uk to be the first to hear about new productions, festivals showing Alamo's films, and to connect with the team. Now back to Factual America. Welcome back to Factual America. I'm here with Yemi Bamiro and Kari Lia, the award-winning filmmakers behind Trainwreck, the Astroworld tragedy, streaming on Netflix from June 10th. Yemi, we've been talking about the Astroworld tragedy. We haven't really said, we've said it, it led to unfortunately led to the deaths of, I think, 10 people, and many were injured. Many hundreds were injured. It was essentially, I don't know if we've even said this yet, but people were crushed to death, basically, because of what was happening in the crowd. And for me, this had an eerie echo of another crowd crush tragedy, and that's the one at Hillsborough. with football, and I wonder, did that enter your mind while you were doing this project at all? Because, and there's other things that related to that felt very familiar.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be clumsy with the comparisons,
I
but
understood.
I feel that, yeah, any sort of like large gathering where people sort of like get caught up in a crush of some sort, I think you're gonna, you're gonna reference that. You're gonna sort of, that's gonna be in your thinking. So, yeah, I'm not gonna say that I didn't think about like Hillsborough. I didn't think about like the untold,
right,
like well, yeah, there's loads of other sort of like concert crowd crushes, you know, dating back from the 60s,
right,
where this has happened. So yeah, all of those things were definitely in our minds, and sort of, we were trying to understand like like how those things happened, and if there are similarities or parallels with the film that we were making. But ultimately, we made a film about that night itself, and that was unique to what happened at Astroworld 2021.
I mean, I guess why I was, and I agree, it can be very clumsy, these kind of comparisons, but I guess what struck me was some of these narratives. You don't dwell on it too much in the film, but there were these narratives that were playing out immediately after it happened about drugs and crowd violence, and it was almost sort of, in some cases, victim blaming. And it was interesting to see how that happened, probably because of the nature of the world we're in now, and things move even so much more quickly. But how quickly, I think it was even more quickly than the Hillsborough. It doesn't matter. I mean, it definitely, it was happening. And can we dispel some of those myths now? I don't know if those, or any of those, still kind of hanging around. Do people still believe these people were on fentanyl and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you make a good point. I think that was my entry point. I think that's one of the reasons why I was really interested in this film, because I remember when it happened, the amount of misinformation and sort of like narratives surrounding like what actually happened was just kind of mind-blowing to me, and I think for me that's like really fertile ground for sort of like the basis of making a film like this. Like there are all of these conflicting narratives and misinformation, and I think if you couple that with like social media and sort of like TikTok and sort of like just the age that we were in, all of that stuff, like you said, like spread like wildfire. So I think for me, like like talking to some of the amazing like young people in our film and sort of, giving them the space to sort of like talk about their own experiences was really important, because that in itself like challenged or confirmed some of those wild narratives or some of the things that were sort of like circulating and percolating when it came to this event and the misinformation. So I think for us it was very important to lean on the victims and lean on the people that were there and the survivors in terms of like giving them the space to speak their own truth.
Okay. And going back to those young people and the stories you tell, I mean, there's some incredible stories that, I mean, I guess, were these stories you knew about going in? These and not coincidences, but people who nearly were victims themselves and then save others and things. These are incredible stories. The one fellow that was really, you've got great footage of him trying to tell him to stop the concert and no one's listening to him. I mean, was that, I guess you uncovered that as you got into the project. Is that right, Kari?
Yeah, that's what we did in the development period. Well, we started in the development period and carried on. And you can imagine, we had a team and they just started talking to people and it rolls on. Or you talk to more and more. And then, it's always wonderful for documentary storytelling, like the stories that you're talking about, where kind of different stories join up and people meet each other. And of course, that's what happens in our film. And I think, we ended up speaking to, I don't know how many, dozens and dozens and dozens of people. And then, what we find is like, who are, out of these young people, who really tells the story that, the audience is going to connect with, and actually we can tell a full story from the beginning till the end. So that was our focus, but it took a really long time. It didn't happen right away.
Okay. And just to jump in there as well, I think it's important to kind of like highlight the fact that before we even sort of like thought about shooting, myself and Hannah the producer and co-director, we did a 9-day trip to the States and sort of just met people and hung out with people, went to people's houses, went to people's offices, just to sort of like connect with people and build up that initial sort of like rapport, you know, because like we were just really conscious of the fact that it would be like crazily inappropriate and insensitive just to sort of like rock up with cameras and like get people to sort of like try and relive like what happened that night. So it was really important that like, you know, we earned their trust and we sort of like built this. And I think that trip was significant because it was the basis for this whole film. You know, I don't think we would have been able to make it any other way if we hadn't have sort of like done that trip. So yeah, shout out to Passion Pictures, because that doesn't happen on every production. You're not afforded the time and the care to sort of like do a trip like that, you know?
Well, I mean, yeah, good shout out, because I mean, I know of a director who was on a project. I think, no, it wasn't a, he's done stuff for Louis Theroux, but it wasn't for him. But he did spend I don't think many people have the luxury to spend a whole month with a community before they actually get cameras rolling. But yes, he certainly has told me how important it is to just, I mean, you know, to build that rapport and trust. So no, I think that's a very good point. So I guess, how did you become involved, Yemi? Was this from Passion Pictures approach you, or how did this happen?
Yeah, so Hamish, the creative director, used to be at the BBC, and I'd sort of like worked with Hamish before, and I started speaking to Hamish and Hannah, who did a lot of the development on this project. And I think the moment we started talking about this, there was just sort of like there was just a common ground in terms of like the story that we kind of like all wanted to tell. Like, you know, I sort of, I'd always appreciated like what Travis Scott did as an artist. For me, I was always fascinated with the fact that like that early Travis Scott era, it was like this guy from Houston, Texas. Houston, like, you know, hip hop music from the South has a very specific sound. Right. And then I think when Travis came out, it was like really, it was almost like a punk rock energy. Do you know what I mean? Like really progressive, really innovative. So we sort of like, we spoke about all of these things, and then sort of like the film and like, you know, platforming and sort of like giving sort of like survivors and to tell their story. And it just felt like a sweet spot, you know, and yeah, that's how I got involved.
Okay. And I mean, just you're okay. I haven't seen some of your other films. I've only seen One Man in His Shoes in addition to this one, but you've seemed like you're drawn to some common themes here. I mean, at least, or it does feel like it kind of makes a full circle. So, I mean, you kind of like to take on the big boys too. You've got, I mean, I'll name the names. You probably can't say certain things, but you know, you've focused on Nike before. Now you've got live action, you know, and you've got, you know, there's a theme of sometimes, because if people don't know, they should check it out. One Man in His Shoes is all about, obviously, it's Michael Jordan and Air Jordans and the phenomenon they were, and they also came with there's some, how best to put it, Yemi? Some side effects, some baggage that came along with them a little bit that happened in certain societies, so certain areas. So yeah, I mean, that's influence that celebs have on youth culture. I mean, it's I mean, as you say, Travis Scott's a very interesting. I didn't know him that well, but I did start doing. You watch the film and then start doing some research on him. It's very interesting, interesting fella he is.
Yeah, I mean, like, maybe there are common themes. Like, you know, I really love music. I love sports. I love sort of like that wider commentary on sort of like, you know, about how two worlds collide. But I think ultimately, it's people telling stories that are sort of like really fascinating. And I think that is the common ground, you know, in light of sort of like, you know, big stakeholders, I guess. But I think ultimately it's about people and sort of like giving, you know, people the space to speak their truth. And I gravitate to stories that like involve that.
And Kari, what was the biggest challenge in making this film? At least for you as exec producer.
Yeah,
was it the legal side?
That's always a challenge, Matthew. It's a challenge. But I would say it was really important to us to be able to do justice to the stories of the victims. And I think in order to do that, we had to have a absolute rock solid journalism underpegging the bottom of this. You know, we want everyone who comes to this film to know that everything you're seeing, everything you're hearing is absolutely, you know, been fact checked. You know, that's the boring bit, right? But the emotional bit for us, and I think the challenging thing, but the most rewarding thing, was actually what that meant is once we had that foundation, that we could tell these stories. We needed to do justice to these kids' stories and actually give their voice meaning, because they really felt like they were putting themselves out there, you know, to say this, because, you know, in today's world, you put yourself out there and, you know, you run in danger of being attacked, and they're all very aware of that. So, you know, they are putting their trust in our team, and it's really important that, you know, we turn up and that we do them the honor of telling their story well. So I think that was the thing that kept me up at night, is yes, of course, making sure everything is perfectly, beautifully, you know, journalistically sound. But actually the whole point of that is so as a viewer, you just sit back and you just totally engage with what's going on.
And I think you achieved that, but have you had feedback from them? Have they seen the, any rush or
Yeah, that's amazing. We've showed the film to almost everyone in the film, and certainly all the victims and all the victims' families. I mean, the victims that are in the film, and Rudy is who I'm referring to, and the reaction was incredible. The reaction was incredible because. We don't know what to expect. And for, you know, as Yemi, I'm sure will tell you as well, you're very, very nervous because, you know, like I say, these people have put their life and their story in our hands, and you show them, and they might not like it for a whole number of reasons. And sometimes, you know, it has absolutely nothing to do with the way that we've shot it or edited it or anything. But across the board, everyone was really happy with the film, really proud to have taken part. And I think also and this was a surprise to us, was that they felt quite grateful to have been able to have a chance to tell their story.
Kari, maybe you can tell us a bit more about the Trainwreck series. And, you know, because that's, and also why are you leading with the Astroworld story?
Well, that is a question for people with a much higher pay grade than me. That's the folks at Netflix that make that decision. I would like to think, I haven't seen the other 7 films. I'd like to think, because this one is incredible. We're certainly very, very happy about it.
Right.
As I say, I haven't seen the other 7. But what I can say is that we watched Woodstock 99, which I think was the first Trainwreck, and we were really impressed. Again, it's like a story that was in the popular kind of consciousness, but is these stories are like absolute head-gun grabbing, you can't look away type of stories, but also have a real underpinning of depth and emotion and intrigue that I think as a viewer, you watch it because you've heard of the story and you can't look away, but actually you find that through that process you get a dose of humanity that maybe you didn't expect.
Okay. Yeah, we had the Woodstock people on a few years ago. And actually, if you want a little bit of little trivia here, it wasn't originally Trainwreck, the title of the series, or maybe it was always going to be the series, but you can almost play a drinking game to see, because we had 4 guests on and myself, and the number of times the word, so hide your ears if you're sensitive to these things, it was called Clusterfuck. Woodstock 99, and so we filmed it when it was still titled that, and then just the day before we released, we get Netflix tells us, I think understood why, changed the name. So yes, that wasn't, so we could have had a very different kind of tone to this podcast if we'd had to, if we'd gone with the original title. But that's, but I think I agree, there's stories that you can't look away, yet oddly enough they've gone a bit quiet sometimes. And I think even Astroworld, I was surprised. This is a story that's only 4 years ago, right? It's not even 4 years ago. And if you look it up, I mean, yeah, you can find it very quickly. But even in some of the Wikipedia entries for different people involved, it's kind of almost brushed under the carpet.
It's such a good point, and it's something that we felt and that we were told when we were speaking to people. You know, when we spent time in Houston, when we spent time in sort of like Austin and Dallas, and
Right.
you know, shooting this film, people were like, yeah, like we feel like it's just been forgotten. This was a global story. Like I remember seeing it on Sky News.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It was breaking. It was a breaking yellow bar like beneath the screen that said like, you know, fatalities at this like music concert. So I think it's a great point. Yeah, like definitely a lot of the people in our film felt like that, you know, which was motivation for them sort of like wanting to be a part of the film. It's just like to remind people that like this happened, this was like horrifying, but this is my truth, and yeah, that's basically
Yeah.
Yeah, Kari.
Just to add to what Yemi was saying, we actually had an internal viewing for our company, and just internally, people were able to see it. And what was really amazing is the very few people that have seen this film have said, "Wait a second, I heard about this. I had no idea that's what happened." And so that was quite. Even if you heard about it at the time, I think people didn't realize that it was actually like this. And I think, you know, if you get a chance to watch the film, that's, you know, hopefully we really tried to take you on that journey and understand what happened and why it happened. And it was a real privilege to be able to do that.
Well, I mean, I like Yemi. I remember the bar coming on Sky News and and seeing the horrible numbers of deaths and stuff. But then, you know, I didn't follow it. I didn't read follow-up articles in the press on it, but I did you just pick up on a vibe or things that are said. And I hadn't heard about some of the rumors about, or the misinformation about the crowd, but I remember hearing that it was Travis Scott himself had encouraged it, right? Or something to that effect. I mean, as you say, you point out what was and wasn't going on, and what he could and couldn't see, and what was being shared with him or not. And he has publicly addressed these issues, but yeah, I remember just, okay, yeah, this guy. But that was the impression I had. I had a completely wrong impression of what had happened, and in this day and time when everything's on TV and on the internet and all these, you would. I think play the old man in the room. I think we're more misinformed than we ever have been, despite having more access to information than we've ever had. So it's like, so I think it does set it straight. And I think it's a very good, I think you've, if I may add my own personal opinion, it's very sympathetically done. At the same time, I've sat there watching, feeling, I feel the horror. You feel the horror of the evening, I would say. Has anyone who's being brought back memories of being a little kid and someone doing a pile on me, and I just, I mean, that's a poor clumsy analogy, but it did, that feeling of fear and dread that these young people had to go through, even the ones that survived. It's quite horrifying, and so hopefully your film does something to maybe make sure that things like this don't happen again. We can only hope. Kari, what's next? I guess we're coming to the end of our time together. Hard to believe, but what's next for you? I mean, you've obviously got you're probably putting some of the Trainwreck series still in the can. I don't know, but what if you've got that? But what else is in your future?
We only made one of the Trainwreck films.
Oh, did you?
Which was a pleasure. Yeah.
Okay.
So no, I luckily we just Astroworld is our only baby. Having as is probably people have said this analogy before, but having making a film is like having a child, and it's a huge process and everything. But right now we have a number of things that are in various stages of kind of development and production. I'm working with a director named Laura McGann, who made The Deepest Breath right now on her new project, and that's really exciting.
Okay, excellent. And Yemi, what's next for you?
I'm picture locking a project this week.
Oh wow!
And yeah, so hopefully I'll be able to come back for a third time and talk to you about that one.
Yeah, then you'll be our number one guest, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Fingers crossed.
if it's locking this week, it's a good chance.
Stiff competition, Yemi. You got to get in there.
I'll make sure. I'll tell Alex we're going to have to postpone that next one, RJ. But hey, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. It's been a joy talking with you. Just remind our viewers and listeners we've been talking with Yemi Bamiro and Kari Lia, the award-winning filmmakers behind Trainwreck, the Astroworld tragedy. It's the first installment of this year's Trainwreck series from Passion Pictures and streaming on Netflix from June 10th. Check it out. Thanks for listening to Factual America. Please subscribe and like us and share us with friends and family. Find us on YouTube, social media, and factualamerica.com. This is Matthew Sherwood, signing off.